quiet out here. All right, I guess I'll just sit here and wait for 2 minutes. I'm guessing that this is everybody, so we can probably get started. This will be online, hopefully, if my battery doesn't run out, which will be great. I figure you guys were already here. You made the time in your schedule. This way we don't have to do extra class or make extra assignments outside of class, so we'll just get this done. Perfect timing. Come on over, Ken. So, is Scarlett here today? Not yet. He may be on his way. But I want to give him a shout out for asking the great question about lactate shuttling. I got into this and I got into some of the research on it, and it actually was discovered by one of the forefathers of exercise physiology, George Brooks. We're going to talk about lactate shuttling first. We're probably going to do about a third of the lecture on lactate shuttling today because it's a really interesting topic and it relates really well to what we were talking about last class with the use of lactate as an energy source and not necessarily the cause of fatigue. So we're going to talk about how that happens. Then we're going to get into a couple of things. Thank you to Tristan for bringing up that I missed a couple of things having to do with the all or nothing principle and the size principle from a lecture a couple slides back. I think it was lecture number 5 or 6. So we're going to start with that. And that relates to some other theories of specificity and some other things that we're going to do as well. So that'll work nicely. Not sure exactly how far we'll get today, but hopefully if we get through a couple of our principles of resistance training, we'll be actually right on track, and we may even be able to have a full lecture class before the exam next week of just review, which will be an optional class. If you want to come to the class, I will have a formal review in class. Students have liked that in the past, especially with the first exam. I like to do that. So hopefully we'll have time for that. So let's start with our lactate shuttle. All right. So let's go. And we can use our black, probably easiest to use. And our pyruvate. All right. What does that funky little arrow mean? In chemistry, you draw an arrow that has one line going one way and one line going the other way. What does that normally mean?
The reaction goes both ways.
Reversible reaction. Awesome. So last class we talked about pyruvate. Pyruvate going to lactate. This happens in the cytosol when we have anaerobic conditions. There's no oxygen present, or there's low oxygen present, so we have a conversion of pyruvate to lactate, okay? This happens through the enzyme lactate dehydrogenase. Okay? And when this occurs, also, I think we can keep the tops off these, hopefully I don't draw all over myself. When we go from pyruvate to lactate, we have to use a substrate as well. What happens is our NADH plus our hydrogen ion goes in with that enzyme, and we get our NAD plus on the other side. And then if you're going the opposite direction, you can go from lactate to pyruvate with the same enzyme, okay? So what this depends on, NAD plus to NADH plus our hydrogen ion. So what's going to drive this reaction is going to be the concentrations of these different components, because we know that the same enzyme makes it go forwards and makes it go backwards as well. So last class, Scarlett's question at the very end of class was, okay, so you're saying with training, we increase our ability to get rid of lactate from the muscle. Remember we said that was one of the benefits. We showed that nice graph of where that kind of threshold happened before training and after training. And after training, we showed that it happened at a higher exercise intensity. Now that happens for two reasons. The first reason is because you increase your ability to oxidize our lactate. This is an oxidation right here when we're going from lactate to pyruvate. Okay? The way you're able to increase your ability to oxidize is you increase your concentration of lactate dehydrogenase. So when you train, you make more lactate dehydrogenase, and that's going to be able to make more pyruvate out of lactate. Okay? So that's one way. But that's not the coolest way that we get rid of it. We also got to get it, we're not going to be able to oxidize all of ours. Remember last time we said about 70% of our lactate got oxidized in the muscle, and we said about 20% went back to the Cori cycle. So how do we get this lactate out of the muscle? That's the cool part. And this is what George Brooks worked on back in the 80s and 90s. So, let's erase this quickly. And we're going to draw our muscle cell. Here's our muscle cell. And then inside that muscle cell, here's our mitochondria. And this is our cytosol. Out here, obviously. And then what we can draw is right up here. This is our blood vessel. And specifically, we're going to the liver with this. So which blood vessel is this going to be? Hepatic vein. Yep. So there we are. Remember, we want to get the lactate into this. Okay? How do we start making lactate in the first place? What do we need? What substrate do we need in order to make lactate? We talked about it all last class. Think about it. What was the first step? Go back in your notes. Look at where the end step was lactate. And work backwards. What was that? Glucose? Yes, glucose. Exactly. Glucose comes from our blood, right? Okay, so our glucose is in our blood. Great. I've just eaten a whole Jimmy John's sandwich, and I'm full. There's been a lot of carbohydrates in there. I don't get those lettuce wraps. Those are for birds. I want extra. I get 2 loaves of bread, actually. So our glucose can be facilitated into our cell through our GLUT4 transporters. We really haven't talked about those too much, but we know those respond to insulin. Our glucose is coming into our cell because we're starting to do some exercise. Awesome. So, through our glycolysis, we're going to end up with pyruvate. Oops. Right? Awesome. Glucose is in the cell. Gets converted into pyruvate. Because there is no oxygen in this case, we're going to say, okay, now we're going to go into lactic acid. Okay? And then from our lactic acid, what happens then? We get 2 things.
Lactate.
Yep.
And hydrogen.
Fantastic. We get our lactate and our hydrogen ion. Remember, it's going to disassociate very, very quickly. So now we have our lactate and our hydrogen ion right there. Now, we got to get this lactate. We've just said, okay, because this reaction right here, LDH, lactate dehydrogenase, just like that guy right there. So our lactate dehydrogenase has made this go in this direction because we have a lot of NADH, and we're going to push it this way to make lactate in that direction. Because remember, during glycolysis, we're making this NADH. So there's a fair amount of it out there in our fast glycolysis. Right? So here we go in this direction. We're making our lactate. We can oxidize some of it, but that oxidation actually happens inside the mitochondria. Okay? So 70% oxidized by LDH. But remember, we said 20% has to go to the liver for the core recycle to get recycled back into glucose through the same oxidation. So we got to get it out. So we need a transporter right here. Okay. And originally the thought was, all right, well, we're producing a lot of lactate during exercise. It's just going to flow down its concentration gradient. There's not a lot of lactate here. There's a lot of lactate being created in our muscle cell. This is our muscle cell. So it's just going to flow down its concentration gradient. But then what they did with research was they actually put radio labels on some lactate and injected it into animals. So they put things that they could actually trace, and they followed it and found out where it went. And they found that the lactate actually ended up going into the Krebs cycle, and then they could follow it out of the cell. So what they found was it was sensitive. The rate that it was moving out of the cell was sensitive to pH, was sensitive to temperature, and was sensitive to transport inhibitors. So they found that actually when they gave more of these inhibitors, the rate of lactate loss slowed, so they could say, yep, there's got to be a transporter there. And they found out this transporter right here and this transporter right here is called, okay, hold on, write this down, monocarboxylate transport protein, which we're just going to abbreviate MCT. That's all you need to know. Monocarboxylate transport protein. And specifically, we're using transport protein number 4. There's 17 different versions of these MCT transporters, but we're going to be using MCT4. That's what's related to skeletal muscle. Okay? So, how does training impact our ability to get rid of lactate? We know that lactate is going to move out of the muscle cell into the blood through this MCT transporter. How does training change that? Okay? We've already said that training can upregulate our production of lactate dehydrogenase. So let's kind of, I'm going to put right here. How does training increase, and we're going to call this just lactate clearance. And lactate clearance altogether means the amount of lactate you're oxidizing and the amount of lactate you're just shuttling out of your muscle. Okay? If you think about this as a big bucket that's filling up with water, okay? You're doing muscle contractions, water is going into that bucket, and by water I mean lactate. What's happening now is you're able to make a hole at the bottom of that bucket a little bit bigger, so that lactate can flow out faster. Okay? So here we go. Increasing our lactate clearance. The way we do this, number 1, increase LDH production. Okay? How else? Based on what we're seeing up here, what would you guys guess?
Can you increase your MCT4s?
Yes, you can increase your MCT4, and what we call when we're doing this is expression. Okay? So we're making more of those proteins in our ribosomes. We're having more messenger RNA coming from the nucleus, going to the ribosomes and saying, hey, make a lot more MCTs because I'm producing a lot of lactate. So we increase MCT transporter expression. Okay, So let's talk about how this relates to exercise a little bit in two different ways. We talked about training, but let's make it a little bit more applicable. Ashley, right?
Yeah.
Okay. You have a race coming up next Friday.
Yeah.
So what I assume you're going to do before that race is you're going to show up on the bus, okay? And your race is going to be at noon. You're going to walk in about 11:30. You're going to put some M&M on your headphones for 25 minutes. And then right before, I've watched the Olympics, so I know what Michael Phelps and all those guys do, and they just put that big jacket on, okay? And I'm going to just walk out to the blocks, take off my jacket, stare at some people, maybe splash some water on them, and then jump in and go. Right? Is that your normal race prep?
No.
What? But you're trained. What do you do before a race?
You have to warm up.
Wait,
in the
what?
pool.
Warm up?
Yeah.
No, I'm good enough. I can just go right from the start. Why do you warm up?
Well, like to warm up your muscles, I guess, so you're not stiff from sitting on the bus.
Wait. What was one of the things that we said had an effect on our lactate clearance? Temperature. Okay, why else? Why else do you warm up?
This is, like, sounds weird, but to kind of get a feel of the pool, like how.
Yeah, you swimmers are weird. You feel
yeah.
water, and water feels different.
Yeah.
I've talked
That's
to you this
weird.
before, but it's true. All right.
But you warm up specific for your race, so if it's like a sprint, like you're gonna do some sprinting to try and get your heart rate elevated and all that good stuff.
And maybe from these exercises, you might change your pH as well. Maybe your blood pH will change slightly.
Yeah, do some
Remember, that's another one of the factors that we said was related to the lactate clearance. Okay? So you can increase your production of lactate dehydrogenase by warming up. Hey, wouldn't it be better if before an event where I'm going to create a lot of lactate, I get the enzyme that gets rid of lactate as high as it can go? Yeah, I think so. Guess what? The MCT transporter expression is also super, super fast, on the order of minutes. So this is a protein that you can upregulate very, very quickly. It has kind of an immediate and a long-term expression. It's kind of like blood pressure. Have you guys done any learning about blood pressure and the blood pressure response to exercise? What have you learned? What happens after exercise, right after exercise, to your blood pressure?
It usually goes down.
It goes down. Exactly. What happens if you chronically exercise?
And it goes down.
It stays down. That's the exact opposite of what happens with your MCT transporter in exercise. Right after exercise, it goes up. But if you consistently give it that stimulus over and over and over again, it's going to be higher and higher and higher. Okay? And that's good because we know we can get more lactate out of our muscle, and it's not necessarily lactate, but it's the hydrogen ion that's going to cause that fatigue in the long run. Okay? And our lactate threshold gets pushed up. So that is how lactate clearance actually works. I didn't have this in the lecture, but after Scarlett's question, I wanted to do some reading, and I thought this worked very, very well with what we were talking about as far as lactate was concerned. So now you guys know how lactate clearance works and how training increases that lactate clearance. Increase in LDH production and an increase in our MCT transporter expression. Cool? Yeah.
I guess
Am I gonna have to go back and do another whole lesson now?
possibly.
All right, what do we got?
I was curious, if you start working out for a while with exercising, eventually you start becoming like sore.
Okay, that has to do with delayed onset muscle soreness. A little bit different than lactate production. So we're gonna get that to a different part of the semester. Yep, good question. All right, now let's see if I can not kill myself. Don't die. Okay. Good. Moving on. Neurotrophic stimulation. Neurotrophic. The rest of this class is going to be mostly related to a lot of definitions, but I want to explain them a little bit more than just writing a definition up on the board. Who here has done a lot of different sports throughout their career from high school? All right, Derek, right?
Yes.
Okay, Derek, what sports have you played?
I've done wrestling, cross country, softball, track and field, rugby.
Let's start with those first two.
Okay.
Wrestling and cross country. Now, bring your mind back a couple weeks now. We're talking about muscle fiber types. Remember, we have specific ones that are good for short duration and ones that are specific for long duration, okay? So, wrestling and cross country. What type of fiber is best for cross country? We're not going anywhere.
Oxidative.
Oxidative, yep. Our oxidative fibers. Who remembers what fiber type number those are? Our type 1 fibers, okay? What do you think the best are for wrestling?
Type 2.
Definitely type 2. Maybe one of the different types of those. Some might be best for some of the explosive movements, like if you're doing a throw or something like that. Some might be best for defense when you're having to consistently, fend somebody off for the order of 30 seconds or something like that. Okay, but mostly it's going to be type 2 fibers. Okay. Now you've run cross country as well, and you've done wrestling. Have you guys heard about muscle fiber transference before? Kimmy, what have you heard about that?
Just that kind of depending on what training or what you need your fibers to adapt.
Yes, your fibers can adapt. Specifically, the type 2s that are kind of in the middle, they can shift more oxidative or more glycolytic depending on what you're doing, okay? And that occurs because of neurotrophic stimulation, okay? So what do you think that means with this definition, with these kind of prefixes up here? Who wants to guess where the actual stimulus comes to change that muscle fiber? Yes, you got it.
The brain.
The brain, okay? It all comes from the brain. So wherever that neurotrophic stimulation comes from, what type of neuron is leading to that synapse being, activated at the muscle fiber is what's going to determine the ultimate type of muscle fiber. Is it a type 1, type 2, type 2X? It all comes from the brain. So a fiber type depends on neural stimulus. And we're going to put the word partially in front of that as well. The other part is training based, and the third part about that is going to be genetic based. Okay? I don't think that Usain Bolt, no matter how long you stimulate his brain to be a marathon runner, would be very good at marathon running. Best sprinter in the world. I don't think he'd be able to convert all of his over because he's got genetics that are predisposed for sprinting. So that would be one of the reasons. Okay, neurotrophic stimulation. Next, all or nothing principle. Okay. What am I drawing here? Those are muscle fibers. What would we call this entire thing together? Motor unit. Great, okay? We have a motor unit. And remember, we can determine the number of muscle fibers that are innervated. If we're doing if I wanted to control my eye movement, would I have a lot of muscle fibers or very few muscle fibers that are innervated by this axon?
Fine movement means more.
A lot. Why? Okay, so I want to do fine motor movements.
Just fine motor movements, you have to have a lot of precision.
You have to have a lot of precision, so you need a lot of separate motor units that have small numbers of muscle fibers. Okay? if we're doing a large gross movement, like a quad, like a leg extension, if you're at the gym, you want pretty much all those to be activated at the same time. So that's going to be a lot of muscle fibers per axon. So in your eye, you have very few muscle fibers per axon, but you have a lot of axons. Does that make
I think
sense?
that's what I thought you were asking.
Yep. So you got a lot of motor units in your eye, but each motor unit only innervates about 10 muscle fibers. So very few. Whereas if you go to the quad, you have less motor units, but each motor unit innervates about like 10,000 muscle fibers. Okay? So now I'm in my eyeball. I want to do a very large motion in my eyeball. Okay? Something very surprising has happened, and my eyeballs are just doing one of these motions. Okay? So what do I want to do for these muscles? I got 4 muscle fibers. What do I want to do? Do I want to activate all of them, some of them? What do you think, Reno?
All of them.
Okay? Great. Absolutely. I want to activate all of them. Good thing. Okay, I got 4 going down there. All right, now the lights have just come out, and I'm going to do a very small movement with my eyes. All right? What do I want to do now? Activate all of them or some of them? Some of them. Too bad. You can't. You can't do some of them. It's the all or nothing principle. I just wrote it down here, guys. Why would you say some of them when you knew it was going to be all of them? Okay? You can't do that. For every motor unit, when this stimulation comes down here, when my action potential comes down, I can't say, oh, I got to do a really small motion, just go to one muscle fiber. No, it has to go to all of them. And that's why in our eye, we have very few muscle fibers that are innervated, because we can just do 10. Whereas with our quad, we can't do just 10. You know? It would be like, imagine trying to open a milk can just using like your knees or something like that. You don't have the fine motor skills to do that, right? Your motor units are too big to do that. So, if we're to do the all or nothing principle, we're going to say an action potential will activate all muscle fibers associated with that motor unit. An action potential will activate all muscle fibers associated with that motor unit. Okay. But this leads very nicely into our next definition. So I'm going to leave this one down here. I'm going to erase neurotrophic stimulation. And I'm going to add in the size principle. Okay? So I'm walking down the street. When I'm walking, I am using my quad muscles, my quadriceps muscles a little bit while I'm doing that. Would you say, Alex, would you say I'm doing a lot of quad stimulation or very little?
Not much.
Not very much, okay? Versus I'm going to kick or soccer ball, okay? I have the penalty kick, it's tied 1-1. We're in injury time. This is it for the game. I'm going up. I'm going to use every single muscle fiber in my quad to kick that soccer ball, okay? How, knowing that the all or none principle exists, how can I control that movement? How am I able to have a little bit of quad activation when I'm walking and a lot of activation when I'm kicking the soccer ball? That's where the size principle comes in, okay? So what this says, let's imagine that we didn't have the size principle first. I'm going to draw a figure. So this is saying, let's back up one step. How do you guys think I can control the amount of force I'm creating?
The number of motor units?
The number of motor units, absolutely, okay? So, we're going to assume first, so this is our number of motor units. So we're going to do 1. So this would be like walking. Okay? And we're going to do 5 over here, and this is going to be soccer ball. Soccer. Okay? And we have a number, 2, 3, 4. Let's say I only have 5 motor units in my quad, that's it. We're going to simplify this just to kind of get to the point. And we're going to say, okay, well for walking we need 1, and our force associated with that's going to be 1. Okay? And then if we do 2, we would do 2. And then if we do 3, maybe we do 3, 4, 4, 5, and 5. So this is additive, right? This is the amount of force. This is force over here, and that's what's happening, okay? So what actually ends up happening is a little bit different than this, because there's a downside to this. This only gives us about 5 different options for the amount of force we can generate. What really happens is we have the size principle. As we go from motor neuron number 1, our smallest one, our walking one, up to our soccer one, the size of the axon, this, gets bigger, okay? So the first axon that gets activated is the small one. So let's talk about your quad again. You have 5 motor units going to your quad. The first one, maybe it innervates 4 muscle fibers. The second one is going to have a bigger axon and innervates 8. And then the next one's going to be 16. So as you can see, you have a variety of different motor units going to your large muscle groups. So they're not all just the super small ones. So yes, our first one is going to be like a 1. So this is with the size principle. Our second one, okay, it's going to be a little bit bigger. Our third one is going to be even bigger. And our fourth one is going to be off the charts. So what happens with this is we have a smoother gradation of force production that's available, and also a wider range. So if we're going to define what size principle is, we could say under a load, motor units are recruited from the smallest to largest, and from slow twitch to fast twitch. This makes sense, all right? If you're going to go do a small motion, let's say I want to go pick up this marker, okay? I have to do a small muscle contraction with my bicep. It would be really bad if the largest motor unit got recruited first, the one that I use when I'm curling 95s over at half acre, okay? That would be really bad because then I end up punching myself in the face. We don't want to do that, okay? You guys might want to do that sometimes, but I don't want to do that, okay? So under load, motor units are recruited from small to large, and from slow twitch to fast twitch. So we already said why the small to large is important, but let's talk about why the slow twitch to fast twitch is important. I got to pick up this marker a lot of times. Imagine if I was using fast twitch muscle fibers to pick up that marker. What would happen to me by the end of class? Fatigue. Absolutely. I'd be a lot more tired than I already am. okay? And that will be bad. So, when we talk about the size principle, let's erase this guy. Everybody got all or none? So what are the benefits of size principle? That's it. So what are our benefits? This is the benefits of the size principle. Okay? We just discussed one. What was that?
Reduced fatigue.
Reduced fatigue. Yep. Don't use your fast twitch muscle fibers if you don't have to. Okay? Reduced fatigue. Okay? Other benefits are we get smoother motor unit recruitment. All right? It's like if you go to pick up the jug of milk and at first you think it's like empty, you're like, oh, my roommate definitely drank all this. There's only going to be a tiny bit left. But little did you know, they went out and actually got a whole new carton, which is like totally not like them, but you're really appreciative. But you go to pick it up first and then it's really heavy, and you can slowly add force so that you don't just dump it all over yourself for the counter. Okay? So it allows for smooth motor unit recruitment. And the last benefit is it allows for fine and gross muscle contractions from the same muscle groups. Contractions from same muscle groups. And somebody give me an example of maybe a muscle group that somebody with a lot of training can develop really fine motor skills with that maybe us untrained people might not have. Oh, golf. Fantastic. A really large power movement. If you think about rotational velocity going through the trunk with that, you got a lot of muscle mass, but it's happens to be a very fine movement as well. Okay? So here we go. Size principle coming into play a lot in a sport like golf. Great example. Any other examples? Super big power. I think gymnastics. I mean, if you think about Simone Biles flipping through the air, she's activating pretty much 100% of her muscle mass, but she's able to land, boom, every time. It's amazing. Okay? Fine motor skills with large muscle groups, all brought to you by the size principle. Next time you see Simone walking around, let her know about the size principle and how thankful she should be for that. Okay? And give her a high five because she's awesome. Moving on. Okay, 15 minutes to go. I want to get through 1, 2, 3, 4 definitions. I think we can do it. Okay. Before we do that, do you guys have questions about any of those definitions? Size principle, anything like that? No, we're good. Boy, this is going to fall any minute here. Thanks. Okay, number 1, overload principle. Okay, Quinn, I'm going to pick on you because I know you run, right? So you ran in high school, I'm assuming, right? Okay. Think back to your did you run your freshman year? Okay. What was your training like per week freshman year?
Like how many miles did I do?
Yeah, how many miles a week did you run?
Like 25 or 30.
This is in high school, right?
In high school.
Okay. And you're a sophomore now?
Junior.
Junior now? Okay, great. How many miles a week do you run now?
Like 70.
70. Okay? Why do you run, but before, when you were a freshman, did you get better running 25 miles a week? But now you run, but
I would
wait,
not
hold
get
on,
better if I run 25
it doesn't make sense to me though. You were getting better by running 25 miles a week. Can't you just keep running 25 miles a week and get better every week?
Nope.
No? Do I have to overload the system consistently in order to continue to get benefits?
Yes.
Absolutely. All right? That's how it works. That's how training works, and we actually have a term behind that. We all intuitively know that. If I go in and bench press 65 pounds like I normally do, all right, and I do that every day, 10 reps, yeah, I'm going to get a little bit of benefit after my first training session, maybe after my second training session as well. But eventually I'm going to plateau, and I won't continue to get stronger. I'll maintain my ability to do that. That is what the overload principle is. So we have to have regular application of exercise stress achieved by manipulating 3 things. So this is going to be regular stress, we're going to say regular increase in training stress by manipulating three things. 1, 2, 3. Okay? So you talked about and all 3 of these things together are going to equal our training volume. So when Quinn says mileage, that's going to be our volume. That's our example here. Who else has participated in sports? Maybe it's lifting or something like that. What are some other things you can change with your training to make it harder overall so that you get increased stress? Derek, what do you think?
Sorry. What?
You're nodding your head like you're like, I totally know this. I'm going to give the best answer right here. No, I'm not. Okay, that's all right. Who wants to help him out? What are some other things you could change? Alex, what do you think?
Time under tension.
Time under tension, or we can also say with that our intensity, right? So our intensity of the workout.
Could you say resistance?
That has to do with this as well. We're talking about overall week. Remember, we're talking about mileage. So maybe we're going to add in a few more track workouts now, right?
Sure, longer.
Oh, longer. Wait, that's different. That's something else. That's duration. We have to do more miles, so we have to do more duration. But we also need a little bit more intensity, so we're going to have some more workouts in there. Okay? Maybe if we want to increase training stress, instead of doing my 10 rep max, I'm going to do some more sets around my 5 rep max. Kent, do you have something else?
I was going to say frequency.
Yes, that's the last one. Fantastic. Okay? You think about high school athletics versus college athletics versus the pros. You have a lot more days off when you're in high school and before that. Okay? Yeah, you're growing and you have more need for that. But as you continue to progress in the sport, I doubt that a lot of the golfers out there take many days off from playing golf. They're able to handle that stress and they can do it without getting injured. Okay? But you need that increased frequency over time. And by manipulating intensity, duration, and frequency, you can increase the overall volume that you're experiencing each week. And by manipulating the volume, you increase your overload. And when you overload, you get adaptation. So that's the goal. The goal is adaptation. So you're saying if I want to get better at running, I have to increase from 5 miles a week? Okay.
Yes.
I'll go to 6 next week. Next, number 2, specificity. All right. Swimming's a really bad one. Who else wants to volunteer a sport that they played in high school?
You do football.
Football.
Yeah.
Awesome. I have a good example for football. Here we are in Laramie, Wyoming, okay? In the Mountain West Championship game, we played against San Diego State. Okay? What do you think are some specific things they could have done to get ready to play here? What are some specific things they could have done in their training to get ready to play here? Go walk into a walk-in freezer, maybe. They need to do something in order to get ready to play in a different environment, all right? Also, if you are playing a football game, all right, football's a highly explosive sport, right? Play length is about 6 seconds in duration, okay? So I want to do things that are about 6 seconds in duration, so I'm going to get on the bike and I'm going to do 6-second sprints. And then the other team is going to actually do football drills. Which team do you think is going to get better? What's that? Rena? Oh, Rena?
The people playing football.
The people playing football, because they're doing a specific action. They're not just doing something of the same duration. They're doing a multi-joint movement that has a lot of intangibles that are related to it. The theory of specificity states that the types of training employed promotes adaptations that improve performance in that type of motion. Okay? Really long definition there, but basically training style equals adaptations. Okay? I'm going to go back to running again because I have a little bit more experience with this. But they have cross country, okay, which is on outdoors on grass and gravel and mulch and that kind of stuff. And then you have track. Do you have any people on your team who, if you run the 5K in cross country and the 5K on the track, are there some people who are like really good at cross country but not as good on the track?
Sure, yeah.
And vice versa? That's specific, okay? There's going to be different things that are related to that as far as your ability to perform, okay? So theory specificity, training style equals adaptations. So, for example, I have right down here, if we're going to train nope, that's not going to work. There we go. With box jumps. Okay, I need 3 good sports and 3 bad sports.
Basketball would be good.
Absolutely, basketball. Two more words. Volleyball, absolutely. One more.
Hockey.
Hockey?
I don't know. Throwing, track.
No, tell me why. I don't disagree with you.
Just because you're using all your force and your leg all the time.
I'm going to agree with that. Hockey, you're kind of in this crouch the whole time, and in order to produce force, what are you doing? This motion right here, okay? Maybe it's not exactly in the same plane, but I bet you're going to be activating a lot of those. If you look at some of the skaters out there who have that ultimate explosive power, I'm thinking box jumps might be good. Maybe this isn't a thing you want to only do. Maybe you don't do it quite as often as you would with basketball or volleyball players, but it might be good. Okay, 3 really bad sports.
Billiards.
Billiards? Yes. Let's break a minute there. I want to talk about billiards a little bit more. You've tapped into one of my hobbies. Not really. But let's think. So we've said, okay, box jumps are going to be terrible for billiards. It's not going to be important for you to be good. What is the type of training that would be good for billiards?
What is billiards?
Pool.
Pool.
Yep. Amateurs. What's some training that would be good for billiards?
Precision movements.
Okay, precision movements. Hand-eye coordination stuff. This is very good. Future strength and conditioning coach over here. What are some things that you might want to do? So yes, hand-eye coordination, absolutely.
Practice threading a needle.
You practice threading a needle, maybe. That'd be good. Some really fine motor skills for your hands would be, yeah, maybe even doing like the ring up where you're doing the for some forearm workouts, something like that. And then the last thing I would say is, for me, reaching around the table tends to be a little bit difficult. Okay, maybe some yoga would be good too. That's a little specific because you got to be able to stretch over the table. Okay. 2 other bad sports.
Marathons?
Marathon running, yeah. Well,
What about that one?
yeah. There's some benefit. I don't think it's the worst. I think it's pretty bad. I'm guessing that Shalane Flanagan and all of them are probably not doing that many box jumps, but I'll put it in here kind of like a little bit.
What about fencing?
Fencing is over here on the good side. Does anybody watch fencing ever? That is completely explosive. It's not necessarily up. It's more a little bit of these side lunge motions, but it's totally explosive. I would put fencing over on the good side.
Darts.
Darts, yeah. You're just choosing all the bar games.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whatever's in the environment, you know?
Yeah. So darts would be another really bad one for box jumps. So you want to think about the specificity principle, especially if you're going to be in training. Those are going to be important things. Oh, it's 1 o'clock. All right. We got through 2 out of the 4. We almost got to the very end of exactly what I was going to do in the classroom today. Thank you guys for sticking with me. I hope this wasn't too out of the ordinary and you learned something that we'll recover on Monday.